Thanks for joining me for classical painting tips. And today we're going to look at ways to paint in the style of a chosen master. And we're going to focus on creating atmosphere and magic. I offer private lessons, consultations, and friendly feedback via Zoom and video recording. So check out my site at oceanviewarts.com. So we'll look at our painting in the style of. So this is a painting by a student who did a great job on it on her own. And she wanted to get more of an atmospheric look and a little more of a look of one of her favorite painters. We'll take a look at Gilbert Williams, who is a fabulous painter, contemporary. And the three books on the left are some of the books of his work. I think they're all out of print, but you can still get them. On the right side is a journal that his artwork is on the cover of. You can see his work at gilbertwilliams.io or on his Facebook page, Gilbert Williams Gallery. And he paints these very luminous, visionary, often kind of extraterrestrial looking paintings, which are wonderful. The one thing I know that is available now that you can get pretty easily is the Oracle of the Hidden Worlds cards. And this is Lucy Cavendish apparently does the text, and the artwork is by Gilbert Williams. And even if you're not interested in Oracle card decks, you still might enjoy this just to have these beautiful images of his work. So I chose the Celestial Visitations book cover on the left, and we're going to look at how this student might bring in a little bit of the flavor and inspiration of what Gilbert Williams does in his work with her painting. As you can see, her painting already has a similar subject matter. It has this kind of otherworldly subject to it. So we'll see how she can get that in her techniques as well. So first we'll look at values and form. So we notice on the painting on the Celestial Visitations cover on the left that this painting uses a smaller range of values. So the full value scales are at the bottom. I use several different value scales. Sometimes I use 1 through 10, sometimes 1 through 9. The lower number is the darker color, and the higher number is, in this case, number 1 is black, and the higher number 9 is white. So we're looking at the portion of that value scale or value range used in each one of these paintings. And in Gilbert Williams' painting on the left, it's a smaller range. He uses between about a 3, maybe possibly a 2.5 or a 2 3/4 there, but between a 3 and a 7. And we'll see in this student's paintings, she's using between a 1 and a 7, so she's got a wider range. And as we will see, shortening that range helps to create an illusion of distance in the background. So we'll see how we will do that. We'll take a look at this with the desaturated images. So here we've taken the color out, and so it is a little bit easier to see values. Noticing values is one of the most important things an artist can do. So on the left with the visitation, he's probably actually using, he doesn't have anything quite as dark as the 2, but I would say maybe between the 2.5, so maybe a 2.5 in there. And on the right, we have a wider range. So that interferes with the illusion of aerial perspective, which we will talk about in a moment. So here we are in color again. So the first thing we want to ask ourselves when we look at a painting or set up a painting that we're going to paint is, where is the light coming from? And it's a little bit hard to tell in this because we don't see significant light and shadow well separated. The one place where we do see it is in the earth. And, you know, we know this is an other world because this person is standing at the window looking out and the earth is in the sky. And that's us. So it must not be on our planet. On the earth, we do see a little bit lighter on the left and a little more shadow on the right. So that gives us a little hint that that might be what's going on. And in this architectural piece in the front, the one that's closest to us, it does appear that there's a little bit more light on the left than on the right. So we're going to go with that. We're going to decide light's coming from the left. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the globe here. And I have this little box up on the right-hand side to remind us about what happens with aerial perspective. Aerial perspective, and we'll look at this a little more a little later too, but it's not linear perspective. Linear perspective is the lines, you know, you might see the example of the train tracks going down, receding to a point in the distance. Aerial or atmospheric perspective actually is about layers of dust and moisture being in the air that tend to change the values of things as they get further away. And in something like this, that Earth would look a little bit lighter because of aerial perspective. And we'll see an example why later, but right now we'll do the Earth. So here we go. We've lightened it up a little bit, and which makes it feel like it's more in the distance. And then we added a little rim of light on the left-hand side so we know where the light's coming from. So that helps with the earth in the sky there. Now, I'm just kind of dumping shapes of values on top. This artist may likely want to change the values to the earth like this, but then go in and put something that looks a little bit more like continents in there with the detail. We are not looking at detail here. We're using big blocks of color and value to see how we can get a little more of the desired look here. So here on the left-hand side of these two architectural items, we are going to put light there because we've decided that light is coming on the left-hand side of the earth in the sky there. So we want to put light on that side and shadow on the other. So we'll take a look at that. So that immediately gives us more of a feeling of light coming from one direction. And you notice I'm not very neat about dropping these shapes on there. You want to squint your eyes when you look at these and get an overall feeling of how it will look. This is not about detail. This is about the overall effect. So we're getting a better feeling of light and shadow here. And then we're going to look at the inside of this like window cutout shape. And so that has the light and the shadow opposite. So outside of the window, the light's on the left side of the object and the shadow is on the right. But in a recessed window frame here, the shadow would be on the left-hand side and the light on the right. Now, this gold kind of color doesn't really interact very harmoniously with these other colors, so we're going to adjust that too. So here we go. We've put the shadow a little bit cooler, the kind of blue-violet-y color, and then the kind of orange peach color for the light there. So we'll take, again, we'll look at aerial perspective here. So we'll remember that when we first saw the Earth, it was pretty dark and colorful in the sky, and we pushed it back into the sky as a further distance by graying it out a little bit. And we also put a little more of an indication of light. So that's part of aerial perspective. This is a really good example here of aerial perspective. We can see that these trees, this is a little bit pixelated, but in this landscape painting, the trees in the foreground have very bright green and very dark shadows. The trees all the way in the distance are the same color as these trees, but you can see that they appear differently. And that's because the further away these trees get, and there's even trees on those mountainous areas in the far distance, the further away they get, the grayer they get. And the darker values get a little lighter and the lighter values get a little darker. So that means the value difference is has a lower contrast. And we have these little rectangles on the right-hand side here to remind us that this aerial perspective or atmospheric perspective is basically, you want to think of it as layers of veils that make what's in the background not only less chroma or saturation, so less of a bright color, and less contrast, but also less distinct. So the edges in the background will be a little softer and the edges in the foreground crisper, and that's how you get a feeling of distance. So we'll see what we can do here with this to get a little feeling of distance. I'm going to put a veil onto most of this picture. So there we have a veil, and we can see I popped up the image of the cover of the Celestial Visitations book, and you can see how we're starting to get a little bit of that magical, atmospheric, imaginative feel to the background. And part of that is because of making the values closer together. The lights are not as light as they were before, and the darks are not as dark, so the value range is shorter, and that puts these things into the background. Okay, so in the interior, where is the light coming from in the interior? Now, guess what? We get to decide. That light could be coming from anywhere. The outside, everything out there has to kind of coordinate with each other. Inside, we can make the light coming from the top or the side. I decided I would like the light to come from the lower right, because outdoors it's coming from the upper left, and so that's a nice balance. And I decided maybe it's coming from a fireplace, and maybe since this is on another planet, the fire burns a different color, so I can choose any color I want. So this is what I did. I chose green, so that's a little bit of green firelight from another planet. And I chose green because this painting has a lot of kind of peachy colors and a lot of violet kind of colors in it. And so the green would be the other color in a secondary triadic color harmony. So we see in the color wheel on the left, the dotted line connects kind of that purple color and the orange and the green. And so that's a popular color harmony that works pretty well. So I just went with that. Okay, so now we're going to look at the figure. So where's the light coming from on the figure? Well, it's coming from two sides. This figure is going to have a little bit of that green glow coming from the, green fire on the lower right. But this figure is also going to have a little bit of rim lighting on the left coming from outdoors, so that it'll have a little bit of light on the left. So I'll have it on two sides, but it wants to be dark in the center. So I dropped these forms in there. Now, again, if you were painting this, these edges would be softened. Some of these shapes might be adjusted one way or another a little bit. However, if you squint your eyes when you look at this, you'll get the overall sense of the figure having a little bit of green light from the right-hand side and a little bit of that orangey glow light from outdoors, but yet sort of dark in the middle. And the figure now has the darkest dark on it. So that's what brings the figure closer to us and puts the landscape more in the background. So here we can look at what we've done so far, and to adjust this and get more of the look that this student was having in her mind. And you can see that in the painting on the left that started out, the darkest values are outside, and maybe on the top part of the window cut out there. But that having the dark values in the landscape brings those closer to us when we want them to be further away. And in the right-hand side, you see that the darkest value, if you squint your eyes, is on the figure. And so that's what brings the figure closer to us and puts the landscape there into the background. So we can see, if we desaturate this, we can see the values a little bit more clearly. And if you squint your eyes, that will help. And you can see how we have objects on the right-hand side, the objects that we want to appear in the distance do appear to be in the distance. And so we have a greater range of field or feeling of distance in the right-hand side than the left, which is what this student was interested in having happen. So here we see this again, the original painting on the lower left, and the inspiration of the fabulous Gilbert Williams work, and how the student could use what she loves about a particular painter and incorporate kind of those things that she loves about it into her own painting. Now you can learn a lot by doing a master copy. A master copy is an exact copy of a painting by someone who you consider to be a master. And that's how art students always used to learn. And so you could, and most of the time it was dead old masters because they couldn't teach you except from beyond the grave. But it doesn't matter, a contemporary painter. Now, of course, you don't want to copy a painting by another painter and ever pass it off at as your own. And if that painter is a contemporary painter, or I believe has been dead less than 70 years, you still can't copy it and even say it's a copy and sell it. But you can copy it for your own self. There's no law about that. You can copy it for your own self and hang it up and certainly learn something. And so that is one of the things that could be done to learn something about a favorite artist's technique. So that's our finished painting. And I think, oh, the other thing I was going to say is this was an oil painting. A student may or may not want to repaint this. Sometimes you don't feel like you want to redo anything. So sometimes the advice you get is not for this painting. It's for how you address a future painting. But if she did want to do this, she wouldn't have to repaint everything. She could scumble over it with a dry brush, a little bit of wet paint on a pretty dry brush. I would use a boar bristle brush, natural brush. And scumbling is using a brush that's just a little bit wet with the paint, and scumble, it sounds like it, just rubbing it in and on top of dry oil paint. And you can take a rag and wipe off anything that you don't want. But this is kind of a little bit impressionist painting. So you could get an impressionist effect by doing that. And that might be something to try. Or she might want to leave this painting as is and just use what we've learned from it on a future painting. So that's how you learn from doing. So this was a great job. She started out with a really good start, and these are some examples of what she could do to get closer to what she said she was looking for. So thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this, please, you know what to do. Please like and subscribe so I can make more videos. And again, I offer private consultations. Check out oceanviewarts.com.